Welcome back to Chocolate and Spice Talk. I am Neha, and as always, I'm here with my sister Nidhi. I'm the introverted sister, Nidhi is the extroverted sister.
And we are so excited to have my friend Shilpi here. Shilpi and I have known each other for, I don't know, 16, 17 years. But our last live interaction was maybe 17 years back. And then we reconnected through Instagram and we found each other. And I think the last interaction, like first interaction that I remember with Shilpi was when we both were pregnant at the same time.
Right.
But yeah, for Shilpi wears many hats from corporate leader to creative genius, and most importantly, today she is raising her son here in US while staying rooted in her Indian culture.
Well, so together today we're going to explore how motherhood reshapes our sense of self and what it means to raise children in America while we're still figuring out our own place in this beautifully complex story. Let's start with understanding who you are. So like I mentioned earlier, I count myself as an introverted personality. I can be an ambivert. Nidhi is more like a confirmed extrovert, highly social. Who do you think you are?
It's funny actually on the Myers Briggs test, I'm right in the middle of introversion and extroversion. I think over the years, I've made a journey from being a solid introvert to being more comfortable in putting my thoughts and expressing my thoughts outwardly. So I feel like now I'm more maybe towards the extrovert side of the scale. But I think that was a huge sort of like work in progress as I made the journey from introversion to extroversion. Not to say that people need to make that journey, but I was very compelled, especially as I came to the US and I felt like, your identity is sort of questioned when you're in a new context. And so I almost felt more the need to like put myself out there and put my thoughts out there and have people know me as who I am. And I think that's a huge part of like what compelled me to go from introversion to extroversion. And so in short, I think I'm more an extrovert now than probably I was when I was like 10 or 15 or 20.
And I think that is why we didn't communicate a lot in college, Shilpi. Now that I'm looking
Possibly.
back,
Yeah, yeah,
you we were in our own shell. Like you were in
right.
your own shell. You were introverted. You had certain circle of friend that you like to stick to, and so did
Yeah,
I. But
yeah.
you had a little bit of boundary around you that I never crossed. But after,
I,
like right now, there isn't one. So I'm pretty
yeah.
sure you feel the same way.
It's so funny, Nidhi. Actually, so many people have told me that, and it's interesting how you don't always have a sense of like how you're being perceived or how you show up, right? And I think what might be like your sense of insecurity and complexity may be perceived as like you're being guarded and you have these boundaries. I came from a household and childhood where I'd never spoken to boys, even though I was in a co-ed school until like 10th grade. I mean, never spoken, meaning, of course, you passed in the hallways and you exchanged like textbooks and notes. But in my house, there was an unsaid rule around like how much you could interact with boys. And so, coming from that environment and then getting into like college life where suddenly you taste like freedom actually probably put so much pressure on my introverted self that I think I raised these boundaries that I was unaware of. And I feel now I look back and I feel like I lost out on like so many relationships and friendships and things I could have explored had I just put myself out there a little bit more. So I love to like hear your perspective. It confirms what I've thought about my college life and those years quite a bit. So
Yeah, you almost summarize my life. It kind of feel like yeah. So I feel like for introverted folks who have to go out in the world by themselves and either make a career or study outside in uncomfortable or unknown surroundings, you have no option. You have to do it to survive, and it may feel hard in the beginning, but ultimately changes you towards being more open minded and probably
yeah.
just more open. So I'm glad you shared.
It's one last thing on this topic, not to hijack our podcast conversation topic, but I also was on a mission in my early years in the US to make my English a lot better. Like, I come from a Hindi speaking household. Of course, we all spoke English. Like, it's not like we didn't study in English, and, English was first language of instruction at school, and that's how we spoke with our friends, especially in the older years. But when I came here, I just felt like to belong, I had to improve my vocabulary. Like, it was just a something that I pursued. And I remember, like, that was the first time I read the true definition of extroversion, which is not so much that you're chatty and you like to talk, but it is that you like to turn your thought outward versus turning your thoughts inward. And I feel like that, like, to me, was like an aha moment of I can now see why I'm an extrovert, because I'm turning my thoughts outward a lot. I'm not like, my social battery is very low. So 1 hour of conversation and I'm done. We can go for 2 hours, by the way, not to like put pressure on this. But I think that definition was really helpful in like also identifying where I belong on that spectrum.
Oh,
I love it. I love it. You've thought it through really, really well. I have the same problem. My social battery is very, very low, but I do like to express myself in any way I can. And I never thought of myself as, I still don't think of myself as an extrovert, even though I'm actually very expressive of my thoughts,
Yeah.
just because like I get tired. If I have
Yeah.
too many people, I get tired. So I need my quiet time. But
I have
yeah,
no idea what you guys are talking about, but
first of all,
So, Nidhi, were you always an extrovert, or like, is this a new era of your life as well?
from the time I was born, I think.
Wow.
I mean, I don't remember a time where I ever felt shy or conscious, or I was a wild child, right? Neha will
I
confirm.
can confirm, like she was born an extrovert. Imagine I was a complete introvert and she was a complete extrovert. It was a hilarious situation.
That's like
So
me and my sister, and I wonder like how often it's the second child syndrome. I don't know. I'm just like speculating, but older kids tend to feel, I don't know, a higher sense of like accountability, responsibility. I again, like, I'm totally speculating, but I've seen enough like sibling pairs where the older one is like the more reserved, introverted, the younger one is like the carefree, wild child. So, who knows? That may be a
yeah,
factor.
yeah, definitely. Nidhi definitely had all the advantage of that.
All right,
Right.
moving on to our topic, motherhood identity. The first question that I have for you, Shilpi, is you said that motherhood has been the most reflective journey in your life. So, can you share a moment when you had that realization and what changed?
Yeah, even before I've seen your podcast on like motherhood and the journeys both of you have had. For me, I think I did always know that I wanted to be a mom. So that was, in fact, I didn't know if I wanted to get married. I often thought that, I will adopt two girls, very inspired by Sushmita Sen, and, like maybe that could be a path for my life. But I knew like motherhood will be a part of the journey. When I came to the US and I recognized how challenging it was in the early years for me to like um, for me to strengthen my identity in a new place, right? I came here like at 26, so I wasn't that young. I had a pretty formed sense of self and identity that felt very challenged in this new place. And I remember even in those early years thinking, if I don't belong and if I end up having a child in this country, like what would it mean to create a sense of belonging for the child when like my own foundation and ground was very shaky? So I remember like thinking about it even before, much before the idea of having Neil was like really conceived. And then as we had Neil, and I feel like this is, all of us are like boy moms, and so we share that in common. I think as the child grows, you question at every stage, especially as you are experiencing their childhood in a way that you didn't experience yours, right? So one of the factors driving that is obviously I grew up in India, he's growing up here, but there's just so much more in the modern era, right? Like the use of social media, phone, videos, not having your community. So he's being raised in a very different way than I was, and in an environment that is entirely different than mine was. And so I think that makes you reflect and question like every choice and step along the way, right? Like, is this right and is this wrong? Because you have no measure of what right and wrong looks like in this new world. And so I think, that like causes deep introspection and reflection for me. Like every day I'm questioning, do I intend to be a gentle parent or do I need to discipline? Like, where do you fall on the spectrum? Is it good to like give him some level of phone exposure for his development, for my peace of mind, or is that like a no? So I feel like you reflect just all the time because you have this immense responsibility of like raising a child and a human, and um, you know making them sort of capable of navigating the world while also like being kind and good people at heart. And I feel like that's hard, like that's a big responsibility.
Yeah, I totally agree. And for me, one of the biggest reflective moment in this motherhood has been the way we have been brought up is like we only enjoy or celebrate milestones. Like when you graduate, you celebrate. And when you get into a really good college, you celebrate. You get married, you celebrate. And that has been cultural, and that
Yeah,
has how we have been brought up.
yeah,
And that is a hustle culture here too. Yeah, like unless
correct.
you finish a project, your team cannot celebrate. I
Yeah,
just don't like, for me, like what I
yeah,
want to pass on to my child. I don't like that concept. I don't like it. I just feel that we should lower our threshold for joy. And that is what
I
I
love
want.
that.
Yeah, it's like, and he's unfortunately getting the same thing because he goes to school here. It's competitive. He's like,
Yeah,
"Oh, mama, I'm going to celebrate the day I get a star." And star is like you have to complete a set of things in
yeah,
class. I'm like,
yeah,
why do you have to wait to celebrate to get a star? You learned fraction today. Isn't
yeah.
that celebrating?
I
Isn't
love that
that
you said that, Nidhi. Like I do feel it's so cultural. Like we're so hesitant to celebrate, right? Like some of that is just superstition. Like if you get too happy, something can go wrong. Or sometimes it's like, don't get too happy too soon. Like something can go wrong. Like I think there is a lot of I don't know. We're very like we hesitate to celebrate, and I have that like in my own self. Like I'm like not yet, not enough. I need to do more. I need to like wait a little bit longer. I can't put this out in the world. I mean, it goes back to the introversion, extroversion also a little bit. Like previously, I would hesitate to like put versions of my thinking and myself out there because it was not yet right for like public viewing. And so you're so right. I think that's cultural. And I think, raising your child with that pressure um, will impact how they grow up to be, right? Like, because we don't, like, I would not want for Neil to like judge his life by like just milestones alone. I would want him to be happy, as happy as one can be while navigating life. I love, like what you said, the threshold for joy has to be much lower because life is like hard in itself. So I love that.
And Neha, I think I'm pretty sure you can connect to that because you are exactly the kind of person like you are very creative. And for being as creative, Shilpi, as you are, I know how much you've achieved. And Neha, I know how much you do. It's like when you are that kind of a perfectionist, it's hard to enjoy every moment, right? To get joy out of small things, that's something not very easy. Does it come naturally to you, Neha?
Actually, you'll be surprised to hear that it does.
Oh.
For me, I absolutely love to reach a certain place or achieve certain thing or finish a certain thing in a certain way, like whatever my idea of perfection is. But it does not hamper my ability to enjoy the moment. In fact, I have learned, and this may be a learned experience, I have learned to enjoy the moments of doing things far more than the moment where I would have achieved it, because I know the moment of achievement is almost the least important, because the moment I've achieved it, I would absolutely start working towards something else. And so now I've learned to like literally live every moment. Yes, there is always a sense of achievement, right? Like when you've completed a project, when you've done something perfectly, you will feel like you're there and you will want to do a celebration, right? Maybe you worked very hard, maybe you spent a lot of hours, but Actually, I truly believe in enjoying every moment. And just because we're talking about motherhood, that's the thing that I tried with my son. Shilpi, for context, my son is in college now. He's in third year. So that's everything you said resonated with me. You know, I came to the US when I was 24, I think. So pretty close to age. Like, I
Yeah.
don't think my sense of self was still as formed, but I had my son pretty early on, I think the very next year or something. And so pretty young in terms of motherhood. And I was always worried about my own insecurities somehow showing up in my son because I wasn't understanding the
Mhm.
country well. My son was born here though, so he was already, obviously an American.
Comfortable.
And how do you help a child when your own sense of self and identity is not crystal clear? So for me, it was definitely a big challenge. But the one thing that I tried to do was not put him under pressure as much as I could. Like,
Yeah.
we all are from India and we all come from this family background where there is an expectation to achieve.
Yeah.
And I was always of the mindset that whatever he wants to do, if he wants to enjoy dinosaurs or superheroes or Harry Potter, like that's the life. That's what he's going to do. Yes, please study, please do well academically and try to have other hobbies, but don't go to soccer and basketball and piano and a bunch of other things. So that was my mindset. So in a way, my introversion helped there because I myself didn't have that kind of energy or the desire to have that kind of
Mm.
social connections. I never enforced it on him. I don't know if it's
How
good
did he,
for him or
is
not.
he introverted or extroverted? I'm so curious.
He is. He will never agree to it, but in my opinion he is an introverted who does not mind expressing himself. So he's already where I had to learn to come.
Mm.
So he doesn't have a big social battery. He doesn't like to have big groups of friends, but you talk to him and he will tell you exactly what he's thinking, and he's not at all shy about it.
Mm.
So
Mm.
yeah,
I
that's
really liked what you said about, the fear of like your insecurities sort of like weighing on the child. I do believe like one parenting philosophy that I have is you can't be conflicted in your core beliefs as you're navigating, raising your child. Um, I think both partners, if both partners have to be on the same page. But I also think in general, like you can't be one thing one day and another thing another. I think like that really impacts the child. So whatever is your philosophy, that the child understands it, that they have a set of like shared beliefs with you, that guide their life. I think it's very, very helpful. I do feel like when parents are conflicted or like both partners have very different takes on parenting, which can often be, right? Like my husband and I had to like really find common ground, because we come from very different schools of parenting ourselves. How he was raised was very different than how I was. And so finding middle ground in like, how we want to raise Neil, because we all bring our schools of parenting wisdom, to our parenting styles, I do think was hard work. But I think getting on the same page really helps.
I
Totally.
totally agree. Yeah, totally agree. I
You
mean,
guys have that? Like, did you and your spouses have like a major difference in philosophy or belief about something?
Uh, for me, I think for me it obviously it has not been easy. We also have very different styles of parenting, but yeah, we have found common ground. Like we have core values, the way we discipline, the way we stand up for each other, the way we show love, the way we spend our money, the how we want to spend our money, and so on. So those are the core values: the schooling, the education, how much time we want to be as present parents, and all of that we do agree on. Obviously there are conflicts sometimes, which is
Yeah.
normal, but we make sure the child knows that we are loved and we are a team. Like my husband and I, we are a team. So you cannot manipulate us. That's one thing.
Because
I
they're so good at it.
no, you can't go and say something else to, dad and me, because you
Yeah.
have to know that we both stand. And that's one thing that we both are good at. So yeah, that has worked out.
That's amazing. I think we one of our like one of the things that we had to find common ground on, which took a little bit time, is I am a believer in gentle parenting because, and I'll tell you my definition of it because I know it's a very widely used word, but my parents, for good or bad, probably raised their voice on me like 5 times in my entire life. And now I look back and I'm like, wow, like what must it have taken for them to show up like that? Because I still find it hard to live up to that standard, but my hope is that like that's who I want to be as a parent. I'm still like working in that direction. My husband is does believe that like some level of disciplining, and again, like we both believe in disciplining, but like he will not consider like raising his voice as a massive violation of like what parenting means. And for me, it's like, my threshold, as you said, Nidhi, is so low when it comes to like gentle versus like non-gentle parenting. So we had to work through this. So the middle ground we found now is when either of us wants to like raise our voice because our patience is being massively tested, we just say that, hey Neil, like we're feeling like raising our voice now. So we don't raise it, but we express that that's what we're feeling like doing. And that's been a breakthrough because we are allowing ourselves to like express our dissent, but without violating the thresholds that somehow I've set for the family. And we don't always meet it, but like that was one thing that like Adi and I had to really work through because he's like, "What are you saying?" Like he's a child. If he's not brushing his teeth, like I will just hold the brush and like make him do it. And I was like, no, you got to talk to him. And I was also like taking it too much to the other side where I would just try and rationally talk and it wouldn't work. And so I think we found a way to like navigate that. But yeah, like I think being on the same page, being the same team is so important.
I
Yeah,
have to.
and I think like what I really like about what you and Nidhi have been saying, Shilpi, is that you guys are very thoughtful. Like and I was kind of wondering how you are thoughtful as you're raising a very young child. Like your child is 6 or 7, and same as Nidhi, and you are being very mindful while you're doing it. Like I have the benefit of hindsight, and so of course I can say whatever I want to say, but I do not remember myself being as thoughtful while my son was this young. And then
Maybe
I
also a
started.
function of age also. Like I know you were
Exactly.
a parent like much sooner. I
100%.
think Nidhi and
Yeah,
I think we were already in this reflective phase of life, right? You're 32, like half life probably has been accomplished. And so I think you just get more thoughtful.
Absolutely. And we've done a podcast on age and what's the right time to be a
Yeah.
mother. And for everyone it looks very different, but this is the difference that's very apparent to me, which
Mm,
is, when you're very young and your own identity is not clear, or you can get influenced far more easily than
mm,
when your own identity is clear, then you are not very thoughtful, right?
mm.
You may still do a good job or not, but you're not aware of what you're doing. And I really love the fact that you're able to speak to it.
I can't see any version of Neha from the little I know that was not thoughtful, but I believe you. That's okay.
no, she
Maybe.
was. You have forgotten the. I mean, obviously, it has been a while, and obviously, Shilpi and I have the benefit because we were in our 30s. We were obviously
Right.
getting wiser with age, so now we have the benefit of like looking back. There's also a lot of exposure now, the way you didn't have. There are all these podcasts and books and community, so we kind of learn all of that you didn't have. But I think we all, as parents, do the best we can.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
I mean, Nidhi, your Instagram account was genuinely like a big source of inspiration and source of like causing me to think like this could be a version of parenting. Like I love just how you have engaged Vikram in everything you guys do, right? Like I love like seeing how thoughtful you are about like today I've taken him to the dentist and so I need to like take him to Target and give him a treat. Now you'll think I'm a stalker, which I may be, but I do feel like you're right. Like when you absorb so much of how others are doing it, which Neha probably you didn't have the benefit of when your son was young, it becomes an input for thinking then, right? Like then you're like, okay, so I go about my life like X. I like how Y is looking. What elements of Y do I want to like introduce in my life versus, where am I good the way I am? So I do think there's just so much like knowledge absorption that it just makes you more contemplative than I guess you would be if you were just by yourself without like, all the knowledge surrounding you.
And one of the topics I think we were discussing is how, in the same household, obviously, there are two adults who are helping the kids being raised, and they could be very different. Do you feel like, especially in living in the US, there is an additional burden of, the child is American? How much have we become American? How much has my spouse become American versus Indian? And is there a tussle around that?
100%, right? Like when I said, when I was like 25 or 26, I did my MBA here in the US, and I met many, many people who were born and raised here, right? So I kind of could see what it meant to be a Indian origin uh, person being raised in America. And one of my first observations was that, when you see someone who looks like you immediately assume that you will connect and like you will be friends. And then, sometimes when we would start to talk, and I'd be like, wow, I'm not finding any common ground with this human who looks exactly like me, and whose parents probably had a fairly similar upbringing as my parents. And I think that did like instill like some doubt and fear of like, what would it mean to have a child who's raised here, and how much will they relate to like my world, and where I come from, and have empathy and connection for like their parents. So it weighed on me even before Neil was born. I would often think maybe we should go back to India and have a child. Like I felt like I may not relate to my child. Like I had all kinds of like foundational questions. But after the child is born and as you start raising a child, you realize like the bond that a parent and child shares is like irrespective of like where you were raised and where they were raised. So I'm a very anxious person, so I tend to like think worst case. So I at least like that got a little corrected and calibrated. But one of the early decisions I made was that I saw some kids who were raised here, and um, they they um, they did not like where their parents came from. And so when I tried to like really understand what drove that, I think when a culture is heavily enforced on the child and there is no connectivity between the world that they experience in their house versus the world that they step outside in, I think it can create resentment for what is being enforced upon them. And so the one thing like both Adi and I knew was that we will not enforce, we will expose and let him embrace what he likes. And so we expose him, right? Like we listen to Hindi music, or we go to temple, and we have a great community of Indian friends. So he's highly exposed to Indian culture. I don't know what elements of it he will choose to like retain as he grows up, and I'm comfortable with that. Like it was a long journey from like fearing it to being comfortable with it. But the choice I have is like I'm not going to enforce anything upon him. And so that like, again going back to your question, I think the question of like he's American, I think, and we'll find out like when he grows up, how does he describe who he is, right? Does he say Indian, Indian American, American? Like I don't know which path he'll take. um, Very recently he actually came home and he said, Mommy, am I Indian? And I said, maybe. Your parents are. So so I don't know which of those three identities he'll take, but I think the thing I've done is like made myself comfortable with like either of those choices.
That's
And
amazing.
on that story, Shilpi, recently Vikram came home and he asked the same question. It's
Mm,
like, am I Indian? And I said the same thing. It's like, your parents are Indian. You tell
yeah.
me. And he thought for a second. He was like, I don't think I'm Indian because I don't like Indian food. I like chicken nuggets. And I'm like, okay.
It's so interesting.
Yeah, but I totally agree. Neha and I were having some similar conversation. We have a Diwali episode coming up too, and in that we talked about why does like celebrating Diwali mean so much to
Yeah,
me as a parent, and this is all about exposure. Like I'm not going to force you to do something. I'm not going to force you to do a prayer or do whatever. I don't force him to go to temple, but I'm going to expose you. See, these this is a beauty, and then
yeah,
as you get older you choose what you want to keep in your life and what you're not, the same way we did. And one of the questions that I was
that's
going to
right.
ask you, Shilpi, is like you talked about writing a story without the burden of how it's supposed to be done. It's like
Yeah,
we also pick something from our parents and we chose to leave something behind.
yeah,
Our
yeah.
kids will do the same,
I
right?
think that's so true, and I actually think that probably is a happened even like happened even further down the lineage, right? Like our parents lived a slightly different life than our grandparents did. I do think the rate of change may be a lot more between us and our parents and our kids and ourselves. But you're right, right? Like that's also human evolution. You know, every new generation like chooses to go about life um, in their own way. So the temple thing is so interesting. Like when I was in India, I think I've barely visited temples like 2 times in a year. I don't come from a very religious family. But when I came here and after Neil was born, I felt this strong sense of like going to the temple. Like it invoked nostalgia to me to like have the smell of the incense sticks, incense, I don't know what they're called, agarbattis, the you know the just the familiarity of the scents and sounds, that like it's been a grounding force for me here. Like it's a little bit of like my place to like feel connectivity, and less, it's not even so religiously motivated, it's just like wanting to feel a little bit of like my life as I knew it, and have need like some exposure to it. So
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I do the same. Like we have a little temple, and we are not very religious, but we have a little temple. So we,
yeah,
whenever there's festival, we do something. And I'll tell you one other funny story. Again, we are not very religious. And when we were back in India a couple of months back, my mother was praying, and she has a huge temple, and he just likes to eat raisins there, and ring the bell. And my mom was like, "Oh, pray to God, He's give you wisdom, blessing, whatever." And he said, Nani's grandmother, Nani, that's just a statue. That's not even
oh
real.
god,
And
I'm sure your mom would have like been like, what is wrong?
and I was like, no, Vikram, it's faith. It's in your heart. Like what it's what you
Yeah.
believe. But yeah, it's to each their own. So
Every time Neil says like monkey god, my heart sinks a little, but then I have to be like, it's okay, he's learning. So
and I did want to spend a couple of minutes on a career. So, Shilpi, you are in a high pressure, career, and how has motherhood fit in that? And how has your identity changed with motherhood and a high pressure, male dominated environment that you are in?
yeah, my God, like that's a heavy one. Okay, so my identity with work and motherhood, it's really interesting. I mean, I read this somewhere, and again, to each their own. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, and I'm so deeply grateful for that. Like, we had a wonderful childhood because, she chose to be there all the time with us. I don't know how much of that was a choice, but regardless, like that happened and we benefited from it. I've read somewhere that, like, I don't know what the stat is, but, kids of like working moms tend to be much more, I guess, I don't know what is it like, capable, ambitious, I don't know, but I think there's something about seeing your mother's work that creates a sense of equality, that creates a sense of like appreciation for everyone. So I do feel like Neil has a lot of pride in what I do, and I love seeing that. Like it's almost an extra motivation to do what I do. In fact, on some very hard days at work, sometimes I ask him, I'm like, is it okay if mommy quits and just she's at home? And he's like, no, why would you do that? you need to work. I think in his mind though, like he's connecting my working to money, to like more Hot Wheels. So he has his own motivations, but he like to him, like I think he likes and appreciates that his mother goes and works, which means something to me, right? Like if my child didn't feel that way, that would be extra pressure. And then I do think like work exposes me, coming back to like navigating America and all of the sense of self and identity. I think work allows you to do that at a faster pace, right? Like work pushes you to like understand how extroverted you need to be, like how do you navigate challenging situations, how do you navigate like being a woman of color and at the workplace. And I think all that you learn through that process actually helps you navigate life much more um, much more capably. And so I do feel like my work has allowed me to like understand how to navigate the country that I live in a way that if I was not working, I would be at a massive disadvantage.
Yeah, I totally feel you and I totally agree with you. It's like I think working and motherhood has kind of made me also more productive. I understand time management better. I
I mean, you
understand.
are the guru of time management. Like, I don't know, Neha, if Nidhi's told you this. Like, at one point, I kept watching her Instagram, and then I was like, can you send me, like, how do you go about your life? Like, so she actually, the structured person that she is, she actually wrote me, like, a whole, like, here's what I do at 6, and here's what I do at 7. And I was like, okay, like, I'm still trying to get there, Nidhi, but one day I will. But you are like so structured, and I think you're right. Like I think being a parent pushes you to like be that extra level of structured from whatever your baseline is. I think the other thing it does is, I remember previously when life at work would get hard, in the evening, like I would just sulk and I'd be like, today's my day to eat pizza and like throw my legs up on the couch and not talk to anyone. But as a parent, you don't have that choice. You shut down, however bad your day was, you have to show up for your child. Like for them, they look forward to the 3 hours they get with you in the evening. And I think it's allowed me to be more resilient and to like know that to compartmentalize my life. Like I can't just sulk my days away because one meeting didn't go well. Like I have to like bring it back, because for Neil, like he's coming from school and he wants to spend his time with his mom and he wants to have a really good time, and I can't come in the way of that. Like those are precious moments for him. So I do think like being a mom and a working mother, like I think pushes you to like draw those boundaries, to like overcome whatever you're feeling, to show up well for your child.
Yeah, totally agree. And to close out, I just have one question from our listeners, and we'll close after this. And they just wanted to know that getting back to work after maternity leave and the process of figuring out identity as a new mom, like, is there a guilt associated with it, or how do you navigate, especially as a new mom? I know we are not new. I don't think we are considered new anymore now that we have a 7 and 6 year old,
Yeah.
and you are out there in an older mom range. But yeah, any recommendation for our listeners?
I think, like, at least personally for me, I um, sincerely debated, like, should I be at home? Like you do feel the guilt, you do feel um, it's hard. Like it's new territories, and you're like, maybe I should be home. Like I don't know how to be. I do think though that like once you're back at it, very quickly you recognize that it's all doable. There are structures and ways in which the child can be raised without you missing out or them missing out. So I do feel like you have to give yourself those 2 months to get back. And I personally feel like as women, period, women wherever, I think working, being financially independent, having your own sort of like goals and ambitions beyond raising your family, I think is a good thing. It's a healthy thing for an individual.
This is a really great discussion. And, I generally don't want to talk because, again, my son's much older, so I don't want it to be like hindsight benefit and all of that. But like, I have been thinking a lot about, women, motherhood, raising a child, parenthood, right? And my opinion has evolved a lot on it, which is, why is a woman asked, like, why are we asking you this question? Why are we asking you, how difficult was it for you to come back? Yes, sure, your body went through pregnancy, your body needed recovery, but your husband was equally responsible.
Yeah,
And do we ask your husband the same questions? The guilt? Do we ask him, when you come back from work, are you guilty about coming back from a high flying career? And, how are you going to manage your time? I've rarely heard that. And so, why are we asking you? So, in my opinion, it's the same. Like, it's an equal division of labor to an extent, obviously,
yeah,
depending on what you're good at versus what your husband is good at. And your kid will understand it. Like, kids are incredibly resilient and they're very good absorber of whatever's happening around them. And so, they will then uplift their next level of humanity because they would have grown in that kind of environment.
yeah.
So, yeah, anyway.
That is that is so interesting, Neha. I mean, that probably makes for a whole different podcast conversation
Totally.
for you guys, right?
Yeah.
Like where 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 do you advocate for gender equality, and where are there truly differences to be celebrated? Like very very difficult, honestly, to navigate. So, but at least we're all more mindful of it. Like when you said what you said, I was like, huh, interesting. I didn't think of it like that, but
Yeah, and when I was the young mom and my kid was much younger, I used to feel the same things that you're saying. So a lot of that might be hormonal, but over time, it's also conditioning. The
yeah,
society
100%.
expects you to say exactly these words, and so how can we not say we are feeling guilt? How can we not say we're missing our child? But we are not the only parent in the picture, right? Like both parents, and ideally both are feeling it, but we overemphasize that
Yeah.
sometimes to our detriment and sometimes to our child's detriment because then they expect that. They expect moms to constantly hover around them and say the
So
exact.
interesting you say that. I do feel like overemphasizing, like when you also overemphasize because you feel like you're supposed to be apologetic,
Yeah,
right? Like that people want you to like feel like you going to work was, is hard on your child. And so you're like, yeah, I went to work, but I don't know. And, you're like in that space where you're like, you are carving a narrative that the audience wants to hear, because you feel like if you just said you had a great day at work, and candidly, like sometimes you don't miss your child. I was not the mom who would look at like daycare videos. It didn't occur to me that like that's what I wanted to do in my day. But that is hard to admit to like people, because they're like, what, you leave your child for like 9 hours and you don't even see what's happening with them? And so it's hard,
agreed.
you're right.
Yeah,
Yeah, worthy of definitely another podcast. We'd love to
another
have you again, Shilpi. Yeah.
it's a very interesting.
We can make this chocolate and spice and coffee, and I can be the third wheel. So, all right.
Yeah, thank you so much, Shilpi, for such an intimate and thoughtful perspective. We really appreciate you bring, a different perspective or your perspective, and I think that's what our podcast is about. Like talking to people, talking to different, seeing, looking at different opinions, and so on, and just understanding what's out there. So we appreciate it.
Thank you, ladies. And I really hope your podcast reaches more people. I think both of you are so authentic, so relatable. I think, I mean, certainly in the Indian women community, but I think even beyond, the topics you cover are extremely relatable. And so, all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shilpi. Really
All
appreciate it.
right.
And yeah, to our listeners, we'd love to hear your reflections as well. This was a very, very interesting topic, and I'm sure everyone has thoughts. So if you want, please share with us at hello@chocolateandspicetalk.com, or you can find us on our Instagram at chocolateandspicetalk.
All right.
All
See you
right.
next time.
See you
Bye.
next time. Bye.